My concern is that the moving from 5 years, from 2 years, is that that's counter the trend. There's every indication that there's greater movement in London. Immigration figures are clearly going up, and in the foreseeable future, I think that's trended also. I can't see why we're looking at 5 rather than 2, when that is against the trend of what's taking place in London. People are moving around more, want to be able to find good accommodation. Barnet should address that.
I think the rationale is that it's trying to prioritise people who have a stronger local connection. So my argument to that would be why should somebody who's just moved into the borough have a higher priority than me when I have been here longer? So that's the sentiment behind that point. If that makes sense.
It makes sense, but the trend is for people to be moving more, and in which case, why not put it at 2 years to address that fact? It doesn't take away the fact that people who've been here for 5 years, 10 years, whatever, can also apply, but we're saying we're going to address those people who have, for whatever reason, moved into the borough in the space of the last 2 years.
Councillor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I agree with my colleagues on the first two spaces on the table here, 3.5 and 4.26. I think that 5 years is just to take away all hope. Now, I know you're going to tell me you haven't got the units, and that's the fault of a succession of governments. But, you know, we're the council for all that. We have to continue to offer the hope. I mean, like all other councils, we all get a lot of housing casework. And, you know, even from a selfish point of view, it's, you know, it'd be nice, we wouldn't want to tell people, you have 5 years, you know. So, I mean, we live in desperate times, and, you know, throughout the main report, the finance report this evening, we see that, you know, 6% of people, on 60% of people on housing benefit are actually working. And some, you know, there's an awful lot of people on benefit, housing benefit, another benefit are actually working. So these are very difficult times we're living in. And there are other voices out there. I mean, this is an austerity package, and this, what the government talks about, you talk in the main report about your 72 million, but there's an awful lot of money to have to find, an awful lot of cuts to have to make. But you know, there are very prominent people in the financial world. That chap who writes won the Nobel Prize in New York, he keeps saying that. And people do listen to him, and it gets reported in all the good, including the Financial Times, which I don't believe at all, I have to say, including the Morning Star, which I do read, which is a very good thing. But you know, he's saying austerity leads to austerity, and he's the Nobel laureate. Yeah? So I mean, we can't be given into it by saying, oh no, we can't be putting up with, you know, and, you know, house prices now, there's one in Barnet, they've got ridiculous. So, I mean, can we, if house prices get increasingly absurd, can we be the ones sort of adding to it and saying, oh, well, you get nothing here for 5 years, or you get nothing here for 2 years if we refuse? I think we have to be the ones to hold out some hope for people. Yeah? Now, you know, it's not deceitful. I know we haven't got the stock. That's the fault of a few governments. They haven't got the stock. But, you know, we have to soften people's lives at this stage, because, you know, 60% of people on benefit are actually working. So these are very hard times we're living through, and we have to try to resolve it day to day. And I think we have to work accordingly. And we have to show a little bit, it's not deceptive, even though we haven't got the stock, which I know we don't have. It's not deceptive to appear to be magnanimous and understanding. Now, you know, the choice-based letting was better for this, but the landing is more difficult. But you know, we've all had people come to us for years, working for houses. You have them yourself, we all have them. And you despair to see them coming some Saturdays, because you have no answers. So I think in these harsh times, we should back off here and just leave these two as they are. Because these are harsh times. But, you know, I know stock's not there, but you know, people need some little hope. And maybe, you know, governments may relent. I mean, maybe these cuts, as envisaged in the Bain report going on to 2020, maybe, after all, the last European elections rejected a lot of this austerity, maybe governments will have to people, some of these bondholders, will have to take that haircut Mrs. Merkel talked about a few years ago, and maybe there'll have to be a big debt write-down for lots of people. So, you know, we can't slam the door, we have to offer some hope. And I think that for some of the families, or our constitutions outlined, you know, schools and all of that, 5 years, and your reasons for leaving the borough might be manifold, you know, abuse, violence, God knows what. You know, you might be just literally running away, or in desperate need, or whatever. So I would go along with my colleagues on those two. Thank you very much.
A question that one thing was no hope is surely false hope. By leading people to think they will get something when as you yourself have said.
Well, we never get false hope, but
so my question to you would be, with
there's
as
false
you knew I
hope
was
and no hope.
as I was going to,
Yeah.
you knew I was going to say that the sort of limitations.
I know, as I said
How
to
do you think Barnet Homes officers should be prioritising, if not by 5 years?
We totally discuss it when we do the housing strategy. Councillor Davey, no disrespect. We're putting our concerns forward. We are going to forward in very great detail on a housing strategy. The first time in a decade, elected members are going to have the opportunity. You're asking us questions. I mean, we ask you questions, you always turn the question back on us. As a Speaker of the House, a good fugitive always says, you have to take responsibility and answer questions to Councillor Davey. I think the reality is, the allocation policies is just a piece of paper that is actually dealing with the fact that there is a shortage of supply. It's basically a huge excuse for this council to remove the responsibility for actually providing enough rented housing to the regeneration estates. There's net losses across all the regeneration estates, and it's clear that you're not making enough anywhere else across the borough.
Well, that's the same. Just to clarify, Councillor McGirt, are you saying that Brent, Ealing, Greenwich, Harrow, Hounslow and Barking and Dagenham have all got their allocation policy wrong?
They've probably got more council housing supply, which isn't difficult.
But you're saying they're wrong in having a fine.
I'm not on their housing committee, Councillor Davey. I'm a Barnet councillor and have been for 20 years.
Councillor Davis, sorry. We're not saying we stay as it is, things are going to be marked, all of a sudden houses will be good. We're just saying it's harsh, and in harsh times, and you know, we won't get them into houses any quicker because we haven't got the stock. But you know, these are harsh times, and we don't have to increase the harshness. And maybe this austerity thing will come to an end quicker than we think. People are going to lose a lot of money, and they're called bondholders, and I'm not going to weep over them.
Councillor Langdon. Sorry, is it Lang or Ben or Lang or
Councillor, however you want.
How would you prefer?
Langdon.
Lang or Ben?
I agree with what my colleagues have said, and I think actually there is a fault in this council. It's not about successive governments. What we've seen in Colindale is, and also West Endon, is unprecedented developments in the borough. And as Councillor McGurk's already said, the level of affordable housing, both for part-by-part rents and also social housing, is pretty minuscule. And I would like to know, actually, I think we're actually talking about the wrong issue here. The issue is how we're going to meet this demand. It's not about how we actually restrict this demand, it's how we actually go forward and meet the demand. I don't think we can really discuss this and separate the issues out. They're interconnected.
Do you accept, Councillor Langdon, that even hypothetical scenario, even if the council were to suddenly find the money, the resources, the land, a developer who would build any number of affordable houses, 500, 1,000, that the lead time on those would be several years, and that there are people today who are in need of housing, as you articulated, and officers have to allocate the housing need as it stands today. So even if, and you're quite right, there will be supply side issues which we will discuss, the lead time on those is so far in the future that we have no option but to address how you address the demand and allocate that out today.
You're wrong. There are now about 3,000 new homes up in Colindale that are now pretty much ready to be moved into. Now, there was a point where I just don't understand how the council let those developers get away with building so few affordable homes. That's a scandal. There were opportunities that were missed. Okay, so the question is right now, what do we do?
Councillor Langdon, I disagree with your stance. However, assuming you agree with your stance, which is where you put forward, we are where we are today. So given decisions, whether you agree with them or not, the situation as it stands today is that those properties are not as you would like them to be.
Two wrongs do not make a right.
However, the question then is how do you allocate the stock you have as opposed to argue about the stock you would like to have had or think you might have in the future. And I appreciate they are interlinked to a degree, but there is still a decision to
Not just to a degree, that you've got. I don't see the need right now for a change in this. I think ultimately, if we get together a plan to meet the demands that will come over the next 5-10 years in various areas, and also we've got Brent Cross Bugle coming, which is a huge opportunity for the borough. We can meet that demand. The question is, the council needs to be ambitious enough to meet it. And I'm not entirely sure we are right now. If this is the basis of our forward plan, I don't think this is ambitious for the people of Barnet.
Submitting defeat.
Councillor Houston, then Councillor.
Yeah, a couple of things. I mean, this policy was not one we agreed with. We actually liked choice-based settings. We felt it gave people a position where they weren't actually forced to make a decision at a time when they weren't ready and sort of family, whatever professional circumstances didn't allow them to, you know,
It could also
to be in a place
see
where they could accept. And you know, what we've seen, because we had a debate about that, and a good discussion, we produced a minority report, but there was a discussion about that. And what we've seen since then is the original proposals being whittled away. I mean, first of all, you had two offers. It was felt by the committee, Conservative and Labour, that two offers was a reasonable thing to make to people, and we accepted this. Now we don't have two offers, we have one offer only, take it or leave it. And now we're saying that if you leave it, you're now going to be off the list for 2 years. And I just think this is a further whittling down of the intent of that original report. I would stick with the words as originally intended and be against revising this. In relation to the 5 years, what we're saying to people is you're still going to be banded, there's still an assessment according to need, because actually we do accept that. I believe the scheme is about officers looking at people who are in the right band, but also making making an offer based on who is in the greatest need. We're in favour of the banding system. It allows you to make those sort of choices. There might be that we have to look at some of the banding, but what we're saying is that 5 years is not a reasonable length of time to insist that someone's lived in the borough. And I would just like to kind of reiterate the point that Councillor Langdon made, which is that actually we are not in the same situation as other London boroughs. We have an opportunity in Barnet, because of the scale of regeneration, to do something where actually we can be ambitious. And instead of being not ambitious at this stage and saying, you know, putting our hands up and saying we can't, we actually could be ambitious as a borough. We could actually look for solutions for those in housing need. We'll never accept being able to house everyone, and that's why banding and prioritising is important. And I do think 5 years, being that, you know, 5 years is an unreasonable. We all know people who lived in the borough for 4 or 5 years, families in schools. That has become their home. It's why the issue of secure tenants is so important. Because actually but we need to find through the housing strategy a way of delivering a far better result in terms of affordable housing for people in this borough. 20,000 homes were built there. You know, we should be able to be ambitious, and this is setting a marker now that we're throwing our hands up and saying, well, actually, Barnet's not a place where affordable housing is going to be one of the major offers. I'm sorry, it's not good enough. And I think for those reasons, we're against making those two changes. The other ones we accept are sensible.
Sorry, so one final point. It's a question for you, really, which is when people living in central London are told to move out because they can't afford to live there, they come to Barnet, and when we decide we're not going to house them, they go somewhere else. And the question is, because, as I always say, the vast majority of people who are in need of housing are in work, often in diverse paid jobs, where do they go? Like, it's a false economy. You've got a real employment issue in the future in London if we can't house people. who are in need of housing, who work 3 or 4 jobs sometimes, and still cannot afford to pay council resident, and the council even house them. So I'm just curious about your view on the future of basically people who are not well off in the borough, and what the council's duty to them should be, in work or not.
My view will probably be consistent with the view over the last few years, which in the example I always give is if you go to central London, if you're in Mayfair, or wherever it happens to be, there are people doing exactly the jobs you've described, working in those areas.
What condition of the housing they're living in, Councillor Davies?
So,
We have a responsibility to that as well as councillors.
which is governed by national legislation. So, what I'm saying to you is, I honestly don't know what the answer is. I don't think anybody can put their hand on their heart and say they know what the world would look like. All I would say is that it is somewhat of my own opinion, is that it is somewhat of a fallacy to say that if rents in Barnet are at X level, then nobody who does a local job can live in Barnet, or because they won't be able to work in Barnet, etc. Because evidence in central London has proven otherwise by the fact that you still have people doing those jobs. And the ultimate outcome to all of this is if people can't afford to live and can't afford to work there, and the hotels so easy to clean them, they will raise their wages in order to get staff there to clean them, and as they raise the wages. So I'm a great believer in the free market.
It's nice to see that Charles Dickens is living well in Barnet, that's all I can say.
Thank you. So I think I'll take one more point from